Hey guys, welcome to my channel FinTech Mark. Today I wanted to discuss one of the most widely invested asset class and the one where most of the people put their money in, and that is debt. So what is debt? Debt is any form of lending that you do. So you lend money to people and you get back principal and some form of interest. So, who do we lend it to? We can lend it to a lot of people. It can be a formal lending, it can be informal lending, it can be short-term lending, it can be long-term lending. So, there are a lot of varieties and flavors in this. So, the most common question that people have is that there are so many options within this category. Where should we park our money in, or where should we invest our money in? So there are a lot of options. For example, today I wanted to discuss the most famous ones, which is EPF, which is Employee Provident Fund, PPF, which is Public Provident Fund, FD, the ever-loved bank fixed deposits and corporate fixed deposits, and debt mutual funds. So all of them give you exposure to debt, but today's video I wanted you to understand the relative risk and return characteristics of each of them. And once you understand and appreciate them, you would be able to make a better judgment as to how much money should you put in each of them individually, to put more in the ones which have a better risk-adjusted rewards to you. So before we get into the actual investments, I wanted to put up a bigger picture first so that you understand the context in which we are making having these discussions. So the first and the most important one is all these investments are a part of one asset class, which is debt, which is lending, as I discussed earlier. So this is not your entire portfolio. If you want to have a long-term investment for generating wealth, this is just a part of it. So all the investments that we discuss now, all of them will comprise only that part. Okay, so what do I mean by that? First of all, debt is responsible as an asset class for providing stability to your portfolio against what? Against equity, which is responsible for delivering growth or driving the returns of your portfolio. Okay, so let's say you have a 50-50 portfolio, which means that whenever you get say $1,000, 500 you put into debt, 500 you put into equity. So if you're doing that, this is only the debt portion. All right. The next part which I want to say is the ranking that I have done in this video, that is only from a long-term investment perspective, right? So what do I mean by long-term? I would say at least 10 years is long-term. So the money that you need for short-term, the relative rankings that I have done here do not make much sense. The rankings might be very different. Probably I'll touch base on them too in this video, but this is only for a long-term perspective. Okay, so let's get started with the actual investment options. I'm not sure if you'll get the logo, so let's actually go to the fund, which is Employee Provident Fund. A one-line description for that is, if you are a private sector employee, this is single-handedly the best risk-adjusted return providing after-tax investment option that you have. So this is a fund where you have to max it out if you have an opportunity, of course, and you have to make use of all its tax advantages. So let's start to discuss about what they are. So from an investment and taxation perspective, it's called triple E. It is called exempt, exempt, exempt. So what do we mean by that? It is tax deductible. That is, for basic, I think everybody would already know, but Employee Provident Fund gets divided into three pieces. The first one is your contribution to your Provident Fund. Second is the employer's contribution to the Provident Fund. And there's a small amount that is called Employee Pension Fund, pension scheme, my bad. So that is the third piece is very small. So typically people call it your contribution and your company's contribution. So your contribution falls under ADC, that is up to 1.5 lakhs of the investment. You can consider it as a deduction under ADC. Uh, the company's contribution is very beautiful in the sense that it is not even considered in your gross income. It's not even considered a part of your income, so you don't even have to deduct it. And therefore, if you are, let's say, in the 30% bracket, you're getting a 30% already off on the investment. So even before you have made the investment, let's say you had 100 rupees, if that comes as a part of your income, that you get back 70 bucks, and on that 70 bucks you make the whatever returns you make. Here you're getting the 100, you're starting with 100, there you're starting with 70. So the principle itself is very beautiful, and it's tax deferred in the sense that every year the interest that is credited to your provident fund, that is not taxed. If you know, this is completely unlike bank fixed deposits, where every year, irrespective of your fixed deposit has matured or not, you will be taxed. So you are taxed annually, you're taxed in fixed deposit on your after tax income. Here it's the reverse in both of them. And the third and the most important thing, if you have made contributions for a continuous period of 5 years, irrespective of which company you are in, so you can switch companies, but if you are continuously making contributions to this fund for 5 years, any redemption that happens after that is completely tax free. All the returns that you get are tax free. Okay, so what do those returns look like? In the past, I think 4 or 5 years, they've typically been 8.5 to 8.7%. Earlier, they used to be very high because the inflation rate was high, but this is what typically it is. So the returns are 8.55%, and you are going to get it tax free every year compounded. Uh, and it is who manages it. So it is managed by an organization called Employee Provident Fund Organization. It falls under a Ministry of Labor, which is broadly again under the purview of Government of India, and it is also since it's a social welfare scheme, the government is by force it always is responsible to keep it the returns relatively higher, right? So what are the implications? As I said, it is the best investment in that category that you can ever make in India. So let's take an example where you are in a startup. Let's say that startup is less than 20 people. In that scenario, you know that your firm does not even need to register with Employee Provident Fund. So with less than 20 people in an Indian firm. Okay, so you might not even get this benefit. If your firm has more than 20 employees, whether it is a startup or it's a established firm, they still have the onus on them to deduct provident fund only on a notional amount of 15,000 rupees per month, in the sense that they'll consider your maximum taxable or PF deductible salary as 15,000, and every month they will typically contribute around 2,000, 2,500 for your provident fund, and around 500 bucks for your pension scheme. So again, if you have an option, if and some firms provide you an option that you can choose what portion of your base salary is considered as basic, and it's on this basic amount that 12% goes to as your contribution, and 12% goes as the company's contribution. Some part of the second goes into the pension scheme. So if you have an option, always choose the maximum that you can, because again, this is the best one that you got. Okay, so let's go to the second one. What's the second one? Second one is public provident fund. And I think that, again, a lot of people are already invested in that. You can put maximum of 1.5 lakhs per year into this scheme. It is same as from a taxation point of view. It is again very beautiful. It is exempt in the sense that it is tax deductible under ADC. You are not taxed on every year the interest that you are paid, and it is even tax free. Just that the lock-in period for this is 15 years, which is a bit higher. But then again, as I said, this is for long-term investment. So yeah, what were the returns like? let me tell you how they arrive at the rate of returns for this. It's typically what they typically take is the average of 1 year of the 10-year Government of India bond, and they take that as the average and offer slightly higher, typically 25 to 50 basis points, that is 0.25 to 0.5% higher than the 10-year bonds rate of return. So again, that still varies, but again, relatively, it will still always be higher than your fixed deposit, and it is tax free, right? So always max it out. Okay, only after that should you think of any other investment. And since you are lending this to Government of India, this is the maximum security that you can get. If the government defaults, everything else will also default. So this is the safest that you can get. Okay, the third one, which I would say, if you are maxed out of the other two and you still have some lump sum to invest, is ultra short and low duration debt mutual funds. So there are debt mutual funds. They have multiple categories. I am choosing a relatively safer categories to invest in, which is ultra short term are the funds which lend to companies, to governments for a period of less than 6 months, and low duration are the is where the lending period is typically between 6 months to 1 year. Okay, so all the lending is less than 1 year because the lending is for a shorter period of time. You are relatively sure of that there is less credit risk in a firm. Okay, so it's relatively safer, but obviously not the same as the above two. Okay, and from a taxation point of view, it is tax exempt tax in the sense that it is on your after tax income. That is, you first pay your taxes, and whatever is left, that money you can invest. So in this way, it is not as good as the above two. But it is tax deferred, which is better than your bank fixed deposit in the sense that every year, unless you actually sell your fund, you realize your profit, your gains, you are not going to be taxed on it, which is unlike bank fixed deposit where you have to put real cash, you have to give it to the government even though you have not, your fixed deposit has not matured. Okay, so again, it is at least benefit better than that. Okay, and once you actually sell it, if you sell it after a period of 3 years, you get something known as an indexation benefit. What do I mean by that? Is that your profit is not the entire profit that you have made. What they do is whatever amount you have invested, you adjust that to inflation so it becomes bigger, and you only take the difference from that. So the amount that you make, the profit that you make after inflation, is what you actually pay. So I have some numbers for you for this. So if you take a category average from Value Research or Money Control for past 3 years, the typical average is around 8%. And if you consider the inflation adjusted piece, your actual return will be around 7%, which is still a very decent rate of return. And now let's come to the last one, which is the most used one. I think from the image you would have gotten it, is your bank fixed deposits. So what are, I think there is really no need to explain what they are, and I've already explained the tax implications of this category. It is the amount that you invest after paying your taxes. It is taxed annually, irrespective of whether your FD has matured or not, and the rate of the tax is at your tax slab. So if you are 20%, if you are between 5 to 10 lakhs of salaries, you have to pay full 20% uh, as your tax. If you are in 30%, you are in a much worse shape. Okay. So let's take some examples. So if you consider the private sector banks like Axis Bank, SDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, all of them have a rate of return of around 7.2 to 7.5%. I'm not going to very small private sector banks, and I'm also not considering government or PS public sector banks because they offer much lower rate of return. So I've taken an optimistic number here, and if you apply 30% tax bracket, you are essentially going to end up with 5%, mere grey 5% return. Okay, so I hope that by looking at this video, you have got an idea that for long-term investments, this order is best for you. So max out the first, then max out the second, then max out at the third. And I don't think you should be investing in bank fixed deposits for the long term ones. Okay. Let me also quickly cover the short term investments. Like if you need some money for a year or two, I think there is no better investment than fixed deposits, because that time you need safety and you need liquidity. You don't want any risk on your capital. For those periods, bank fixed deposits are the best investments that you can get, and you should park your money there. If you have very high tax slab, then you can look up something known as arbitrage mutual funds, which have a good tax benefits. But yeah, this video was for your long-term investments. I hope you liked it. Please like, share, and subscribe this video, and also press the bell icon so that whenever new videos is presented, you get a pop-up. Cool. Thank you.